The crystal chandelier in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel didn't just sparkle, it screamed money. It was the kind of light that made diamonds look brighter and tired faces look older. But tonight, nobody looked tired. Everyone looked triumphant. Especially my father, Arthur Harrington. I adjusted the tray of champagne flutes in my hand, feeling the cold condensation seep into my palm. I wasn't a guest. Not really. Technically, my last name was Harrington, same as the man at the podium. But while my sister, Tiffany, sat at the head table in a strapless Vera Wang gown that cost more than my car, I was wearing a black skirt and a white button-down shirt that was a size too big. Keep the glasses full, Stella, my mother, Evelyn, had whispered to me 20 minutes ago, pinching my arm just hard enough to leave a mark but soft enough not to bruise. We don't want the investors thinking we hired lazy help. And try to smile. You look so dour. So I smiled. I smiled until my jaw ached. I weaved through the crowd of Manhattan's elite, bankers, real estate moguls, politicians, offering drinks to people who had known me since I was a child but now looked right through me. To them, I wasn't Stella Harrington. I was just part of the catering service, a prop in the background of Tiffany's coronation. Ladies and gentlemen, my father's voice boomed over the microphone. He stood tall, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, radiating the charisma of a CEO who had just closed the deal of the century. Tonight isn't just about the quarterly earnings of Harrington Groups. It is about legacy. The room went silent. All eyes turned to him. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew what was coming. I had seen the press release drafts on his desk when I was cleaning his office 2 days ago. I had begged him not to do it this way, not in front of everyone. But Arthur Harrington didn't negotiate with the help. For 30 years I have built this company, he continued, his gaze landing lovingly on Tiffany. But a king needs an heir. Someone with the brilliance, the tenacity, and the education to carry the torch. Someone who represents the absolute best of this family. He paused for dramatic effect. I stood by the kitchen doors, clutching the tray so hard my knuckles turned white. I am proud to announce that effective immediately, my daughter, Tiffany Harrington, is appointed as the new executive vice president. And upon my retirement, she will inherit the majority control of Harrington Groups, along with the family estate in the Hamptons. Applause erupted. It was thunderous. Tiffany stood up, feigning surprise, her hands covering her mouth in a performance that deserved an Oscar. She hugged our father, then our mother, wiping away a tear that didn't exist. Thank you, Daddy, she squealed into the mic. I promised to make you proud. I promised to take what Grandmother Beatrice started and bring it into the modern era. Grandmother Beatrice. Hearing her name was like a physical blow to the chest. If she were alive, she would have burned this room to the ground before letting Tiffany touch the company's steering wheel. And my father interrupted, laughing jovially, let's not forget we have everyone here tonight. Even Stella. The spotlight swung around. It blinded me. I froze. The tray of champagne rattled. There she is, my father said, his voice dripping with that patronizing tone he used for toddlers and pets. Helping out, as always. You know, folks, not every child is blessed with academic gifts. Poor Stella here, well, she's always been a bit slow. A bit special. But we love her anyway, don't we? We found a place for her where she can be useful. Everyone, give a hand to Stella for keeping the drinks flowing. The laughter started as a ripple and turned into a wave. It wasn't malicious laughter from the crowd, it was uncomfortable, pitying laughter. But from the head table, Tiffany was beaming. She looked at me with a smirk that said, know your place. My mother gave a tight little wave, her eyes signaling, don't you dare embarrass us. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the tray of champagne across the room. I wanted to grab the microphone and scream that I wasn't slow, I was dyslexic. I wanted to scream that while Tiffany was partying at Yale on a consulting fee from the company, I was the one in the basement office until 2 a.m., fixing the accounting errors my father tried to hide. I was the one who remembered the investors' birthdays. I was the one who kept the ship afloat while they played captain. But I didn't. I was the good daughter. The grateful daughter. Oops. I snapped back to reality as a splash of red wine hit my chest. I looked up. Tiffany was standing right in front of me, an empty glass in her hand. The crimson stain was spreading rapidly across my white shirt. "Oh no," she said, loudly enough for the nearby tables to hear. "Stella, you clumsy thing. You bumped right into me. Look what you did to your uniform." I hadn't moved an inch. She had walked into me. "I didn't move, Tiffany," I whispered. "Don't lie, sweetie," she cooed, patting my cheek. "It's okay. We know coordination isn't your strong suit. Go clean yourself up before you ruin the appetite of the guests. Daddy is talking about the inheritance structure, and you wouldn't understand the math anyway." She turned her back on me, floating away in a cloud of expensive perfume. I stood there, dripping with wine, humiliated in front of 300 of New York's most powerful people. The heat rose in my face. It wasn't just embarrassment anymore. It was something hotter, heavier. I walked out. I didn't go to the bathroom to clean up. I walked straight through the kitchen, past the confused catering staff, and out the service entrance into the cool night air of Central Park South. The night air didn't cool me down. It just made the wine stain on my shirt feel cold and sticky. I hailed a cab, not to go to my apartment but to the office. I needed to get my things. If they were treating me like the help in public, I knew what was coming next in private. As the taxi wove through the traffic, my mind drifted back to how this all started. My father called me slow. He told everyone I had learning difficulties. The truth was, I was diagnosed with severe dyslexia when I was 7. To Arthur and Evelyn Harrington, a child who couldn't read perfectly by age 5 was a defective product. They didn't hire tutors, they hired nannies to keep me out of sight so they could focus on Tiffany, the prodigy who could recite poetry at dinner parties. But Grandma Beatrice saw something else. She saw that while I struggled to read words on a page, I could memorize complex patterns instantly. I could look at a building and tell you exactly how many bricks were in the facade. I could look at a spreadsheet and feel where the numbers didn't balance before I even did the math. "You see the world in structure, Stella," she told me once, holding my hand as we looked at the blueprints of the first skyscraper she ever built. "Your father sees the profit. Tiffany sees the fame. You see the bones. That is what makes a builder." When I graduated from a state college, because my parents refused to pay for a private one, claiming it was a waste of money for someone with my limitations, I begged for a job at Harrington Groups. "We can't put you in management, Stella," my father had said, checking his watch. "It would look bad. The shareholders need confidence. But we need a filing clerk. Minimum wage, of course. No nepotism here." I took it. I took it because I loved the company Grandma built. I took it because I thought if I worked hard enough, if I saved them enough money, they would finally see me. For 5 years, I was the shadow CEO. My official title was administrative assistant too. My salary was $42,000 a year. In New York City, that's barely enough to survive. I lived in a shoebox apartment in Queens while Tiffany lived in the penthouse. But my actual job? I ran the company. When my father decided to invest $5 million in a tech startup that turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, I was the one who spotted the red flags in the preliminary reports. I flagged it, stopped the transfer, and saved the company. He took credit for keen intuition at the next board meeting. When Tiffany, in her brief stint as marketing director, accidentally authorized an ad campaign that violated 3 federal copyright laws, I was the one who stayed up for 48 hours with the legal team to settle it out of court before the press found out. She got a bonus for crisis management. I fixed the books. I smoothed over relationships with contractors my father insulted. I organized the college fund donations so the company could get tax write-offs. I did it all from a desk in the hallway, without a door, while they sat in glass offices. I thought I was earning my place. I thought I was proving my loyalty. The taxi pulled up to the Harrington Tower. I swiped my badge. It beeped red. Access denied. My stomach dropped. It had barely been an hour since the announcement. I tried again. Access denied. Miss Harrington. I turned. It was Mike, the night security guard. He looked miserable. He was holding a cardboard box. My cardboard box. Mike, I stammered. My badge isn't working. I'm sorry, Stella, he said, his voice thick with shame. The order came down about 20 minutes ago. From Mr. Harrington personally. Immediate termination. Revoke all access. He handed me the box. It was light. Too light. He had Sarah from HR go through your desk, Mike whispered, looking around to make sure no cameras were pointed at his lips. She took the hard drives, the notebooks, everything company property. This is just your personal stuff. A cactus and a photo frame. I stared at the box. Termination. I choked out. On what grounds? Mike reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. They left this for you. I tore it open. It wasn't a formal letter. It was a printout of an email from my father to HR, subject, termination of S. Harrington, reason, redundancy. We are streamlining operations for the new leadership structure. Stella's role is no longer necessary as Tiffany brings in her own team. Please provide the standard severance. Attached to the email was a check. $5,000. $5,000 for 5 years of my life. For saving them millions. For covering their mistakes. For being the daughter who never asked for anything. I looked up at the towering glass building. It reflected the city lights, looking like a giant, cold monster. I realized then that they didn't just think I was slow. They knew I wasn't. They knew exactly how much I did. That's why they had to get rid of me. Tiffany couldn't shine if the person who actually did the work was standing right behind her. They weren't protecting the company from my incompetence. They were protecting their egos from my competence. I took the box from Mike. I didn't cry. I felt a strange, vibrating numbness in my fingertips. Thanks, Mike, I said. You were the only honest person in this building. I turned to walk away, holding my cactus and my check for $5,000. I was 28 years old, unemployed, and disowned by the only people I had ever tried to please. But as I reached the sidewalk, a black sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Get in, Stella, a voice said. I knew that voice. It was James Sterling. My grandmother's personal lawyer. He was supposed to be retired. He hadn't been seen at the company in 3 years. Mr. Sterling? I asked, clutching my box. What are you doing here? I'm doing what Beatrice paid me to do, he said, unlocking the door. Waiting for them to make the mistake. The interior of Mr. Sterling's car smelled of old leather and peppermints, the exact scent of my childhood visits to his office with Grandma Beatrice. He didn't look at me as I slid into the passenger seat. He kept his eyes on the rearview mirror, watching the entrance of the Harrington Tower as if expecting security to chase us. Did you know? I asked, my voice finally breaking. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a hollow ache in my chest. Did you know they were going to fire me? I suspected, Sterling said, pulling the car into the flow of traffic. Your father is a predictable man, Stella. He fears what he can't control. And he couldn't control your competence. As for Tiffany, well, she's a vine. She needs to choke the tree to reach the sun. He drove us away from the glittering skyline of Manhattan, towards the Brooklyn Bridge. The rhythm of the tires on the asphalt was hypnotic. "Where are we going?" "I'm taking you home," he said. "But first, I have something for you. Look in the back seat." I turned. Sitting on the pristine leather upholstery was a wooden box. It wasn't large, about the size of a shoebox, but it looked ancient. The wood was dark walnut, polished smooth by decades of handling, with brass hinges that had tarnished with age. There was no lock. "What is this?" I asked, reaching for it. It was heavier than it looked. "Your grandmother gave that to me 5 years ago, right before she passed," Sterling said. "She gave me very specific instructions. She said, 'James, keep this safe. Do not give it to Stella when she graduates. Do not give it to her when she gets her first job. Wait. Wait until the day my son and his daughter take everything from her. Wait until she is standing on the sidewalk with nothing but her pride. That is when she will be ready.'" A chill ran down my spine. Grandma knew. She had predicted this moment years ago. She knew they would do this. I whispered, tracing the grain of the wood. "Beatrice built that company from a single plot of land in Queens," Sterling said softly. "She knew people. She knew Arthur was weak, and she knew Evelyn was vain. She worried about you, Stella. Not because she thought you were weak, but because she knew you were too loyal to people who didn't deserve it. She knew you needed to be broken before you could be built." I held the box on my lap. It felt warm, almost alive. "What's in it?" "I don't know," Sterling lied. I could tell he was lying, but I didn't press him. "That is for you to discover. But I have one more thing for you." He reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a business card. It wasn't his usual firm's card. It had a handwritten number on the back. "This is my private line. If you open that box and decide you want to fight, call me. If you decide you want to walk away and start a new life, burn the box and never call me again. The choice is yours." He pulled up in front of my apartment building in Queens. It was a walk-up, brick facade crumbling, with a flickering street lamp outside. It was a stark contrast to the mansion I would never inherit. "One piece of advice, Stella," Sterling said as I opened the door. "A lawyer wins with facts, but a woman wins with leverage. Don't open that box until you are ready to stop being the daughter and start being the CEO." I stood on the sidewalk, watching his car disappear around the corner. The wind bit through my thin, wine-stained shirt. I looked up at my dark apartment window. I had lost my job. I had lost my family. I had lost my future. I carried the wooden box upstairs. My hands were shaking. I wasn't sure if I was terrified of what was inside, or terrified that it wouldn't be enough to save me. I unlocked my door, threw my severance check on the counter, and set the wooden box on my small, wobbly kitchen table. I sat down in front of it. "When you have nothing left to lose." I closed my eyes and took a breath. I had nothing left. I reached for the lid. The hinges groaned as I lifted the lid of the wooden box. The smell hit me instantly, lavender and sawdust. It was the smell of Grandma Beatrice's study. Inside, the box was lined with red velvet. There were 3 items. First, a thick, leather-bound notebook. Second, a silver USB drive. Third, a letter in a cream-colored envelope with my name, Stella, written in Grandma's shaky, elegant cursive. I picked up the letter first. My fingers trembled as I broke the wax seal. I pulled out the stationery. "My dearest Stella, if you are reading this, then my heart breaks for you, because it means my son has finally shown you exactly who he is. I am sorry I could not protect you from the pain of this moment. But I could protect your future. They call you slow, Dooley. They always have. They think because you struggle to read their words, you cannot read the world. But I have watched you. I watched you organize my library by color and size when you were 6. I watched you calculate the tip at dinner faster than Arthur could pull out his calculator. You have a gift, my love. You see the structure of things. Arthur thinks power comes from a title. Tiffany thinks power comes from attention. But you and I know the truth, power comes from ownership. In this box are the receipts, Stella. The receipts of my life, and the receipts of their sins. I have left you the tools. Now, you must build the house. Do not cry for the family you lost. Fight for the legacy you deserve. Love, Grandma B. I put the letter down. A tear fell onto the table, but I wiped it away angrily. Do not cry. I reached for the leather notebook. It was her diary. But not a diary of feelings. It was a diary of business. I opened it to random pages. It dates back to 1985. There were detailed notes about meetings, bribes solicited by city officials, handshake deals, and observations about Arthur. June 12, 1998, Arthur asked for another bailout. Gambling debts in Atlantic City. I covered it, but I made him sign a promissory note. He thinks I shredded it. I filed it under liability. August 4, 2005, Evelyn is pushing for Tiffany to be the face of the junior brand. The girl is charming but lazy. She steals money from my purse and blames the maids. Arthur laughs it off. This will be their downfall. I flipped through the pages. It was a chronicle of their incompetence. But it was just a diary. It wasn't legal proof. Then, I picked up the USB drive. I grabbed my laptop, my personal one, thank God, not the company one they confiscated, and plugged it in. A folder popped up. It was password protected. I stared at the prompt. Password hint, what do you see that others miss? I closed my eyes. What did I see? I saw patterns. I saw structure. I thought about the first building she took me to. The Whitford Building. 42 stories. 1965, I typed, structure. Incorrect. I typed, bones. Incorrect. I typed, foundations. Incorrect. I leaned back, frustrated. Then I looked at the box again. The wood. The grain. You see the world in structure. I looked at the date on the diary. The date on the letter. I typed, blueprint. The folder opened. My breath hitched. It wasn't just documents. It was a digital archive. Scans of bank transfers. Audio recordings. Video files. I clicked on a file named Arthur_offshore_2018.pdf. It was a bank statement from the Cayman Islands. In 2018, the year the company supposedly lost money and froze employee wages, Arthur had transferred $2.4 million into a private account. I clicked on another. Tiffany_degree_fabrication.mp3. It was a recording. A phone call. I recognized my father's voice instantly. Look, Dean, I don't care what her GPA is. The library needs a new wing, doesn't it? Tiffany needs that diploma. Just make the grades go away. We call it a donation, you call it an administrative correction. I sat there in the dim light of my kitchen, the blue glow of the screen illuminating my face. Everything was a lie. Tiffany's Harvard degree. Bought. The company's lean years. Stolen. My incompetence. A smokescreen. They hadn't just mistreated me. They had committed fraud. They had embezzled. They had lied to shareholders. And I held it all in the palm of my hand. Something snapped inside me. It wasn't a loud crack. It was a quiet, metallic click. Like a lock engaging. The sadness evaporated. The longing for their love, for their approval, for a seat at their table, it all turned into ash. I looked at the wine stain on my shirt. It looked like blood. I stood up and walked to the mirror. My eyes looked different. They weren't the soft, pleading eyes of Stella the doormat. They were hard. They were calculating. I wasn't going to sue them for wrongful termination. That was small thinking. That was what a victim would do. I was going to take the company. I picked up the phone and dialed the number on James Sterling's card. It rang once. Sterling, he answered. He was expecting me. Mr. Sterling, I said, my voice steady and cold. I'm ready. I don't want a settlement. I want a hostile takeover. There was a pause on the other end. Then, I heard the smile in his voice. Excellent. Meet me at the diner on 4th and Main at 7 a.m. Bring the box. And Stella. Yes. Wear a suit. The diner smelled of bacon grease and burnt coffee. It was the kind of place where truck drivers and insomniacs gathered, people who worked for a living. James Sterling looked out of place in his tailored Italian suit, sitting in a red vinyl booth. I slid in opposite him. I was wearing my only suit, a navy blue one I bought at a thrift store. It was simple, but I had tailored it myself to fit perfectly. You look like a CEO, Sterling said, nodding approvingly. He pushed a cup of black coffee toward me. Did you sleep? No, I said, placing the USB drive on the table. I spent the night going through the files. I found the Cayman accounts. I found the payoffs to the university. But Mr. Sterling, this is all historical. To take them down now, to stop Tiffany from taking control, we need to prove that the company is currently in danger. Sterling took a sip of his coffee. And can you? Yes, I said. But I need access to the current server. They locked me out. They locked Stella the assistant out, Sterling corrected. But they didn't lock out the owner. He slid a heavy folder across the table. What is this? Your grandmother's last will and testament. The real one. I opened it. The legal jargon was dense, but the numbers were clear. I, Beatrice Harrington, hereby bequeath 51% of the voting stock of Harrington Groups to my granddaughter, Stella Harrington, to be held in trust until she reaches the age of 25, or until such time as the board of directors deems the current leadership incompetent. I'm 28, I said, looking up. Why didn't I get this 3 years ago? Read the addendum. Sterling pointed a manicured finger at the bottom of the page. Condition of inheritance. The beneficiary must demonstrate the capacity to protect the asset by uncovering the poison pill within the company structure without assistance. The poison pill, I whispered. Grandma was testing me. Even from the grave? She wanted to make sure you were sharp enough to spot the rot, Sterling said. If I had just handed you the company, Arthur would have manipulated you out of it in a month. But now, you know where the bodies are buried. The poison pill isn't a clause, I realized, my mind racing. It's the embezzlement. She knew Arthur was stealing. She wanted me to find it. Exactly. And you found it last night. But to activate this will, we need to present your findings to the board. There is an emergency meeting scheduled for Friday. That's in 3 days. Friday? I frowned. That's when they are ratifying Tiffany's appointment. Precisely. We are going to crash the party. But the digital files aren't enough, I said, tapping the USB. They'll claim these are forged. They'll say I hacked the system and planted them. I need a witness. Someone who can verify Arthur's intent. Sterling smiled. I thought you might say that. Do you remember Martha? Martha? The housekeeper. Dad fired her 2 years ago for stealing silverware. Arthur fired her because she found the second set of books in his home safe. She lives in New Jersey now. We drove to New Jersey. Martha's house was small, tidy, and filled with ceramic cats. When she opened the door and saw me, she burst into tears. "Miss Stella. Oh, look at you." She pulled me into a hug that smelled of laundry detergent and comfort. We sat in her living room. When I told her what we were doing, her face hardened. "That man," she spat, referring to my father. "He is a devil. He blamed me for the silver to cover his tracks. But I kept something." She went to a cookie jar in the kitchen and pulled out a small, black notebook. "I was the one who mailed the checks," Martha said. "Arthur was lazy. He made me go to the post office. I wrote down every address, every offshore shell company, every consultant who was actually his bookie. I took the notebook. It matched the transfers on the USB drive perfectly. This was the physical corroboration." "Martha," I said, taking her hand, "would you be willing to testify? To see Arthur Harrington squirm?" She smiled, a fierce, protective smile. "I'd do it for free. But mostly, I'd do it for you. You were the only one in that house who ever asked me how my day was. We had the data. We had the legal claim. We had the witness. But we had a problem. How do we get into the board meeting?" I asked Sterling on the drive back. "Security has my photo. I'm blacklisted." Sterling looked out the window at the passing skyline. "We don't sneak in, Stella. We get invited." Invited? Arthur would sooner invite the IRS. "Not Arthur," Sterling said. "The bylaws. According to the company charter, any shareholder with more than 5% equity has the right to address the board during a leadership transition. You don't officially have the 51% yet because the will hasn't been executed. But..." He pulled out another document. "Your grandmother left you a small trust fund when you were born. It was invested in company stock. It's been compounding for 28 years. You currently own exactly 5.2% of Harrington Groups. You've always been a minority shareholder. You just didn't know it." My jaw dropped. "I own 5%. That's millions of dollars. And it gives you the right to walk through that front door," Sterling said. "I've already filed the motion. They can't stop you legally. But they will try to stop you physically, emotionally, and psychologically." My phone buzzed. "Mom calling." "Speak of the devil," I muttered. "Answer it," Sterling said. "Let them think they still have the power." I swiped answer. "Stella." My mother's voice was high, frantic. "Where are you? We've been worried sick. You ran off with that tray incident. And then you cleared out your desk. I was fired, Mom. Remember?" "Oh, that," she dismissed it like it was a minor misunderstanding. "Your father was just stressed. He didn't mean it. Listen, we need you to come to the office on Friday. Just for a little bit." "Why?" "Well, Tiffany needs help with the projector for her presentation. You know how she is with technology. And, well, it would look good for the family unity if you were there. Supporting your sister." I almost laughed. They fired me, stripped me of my dignity, and now they wanted me to come back to be unpaid tech support because Tiffany couldn't operate a PowerPoint. "I'll be there, Mom," I said, my voice sweet and hollow. "Oh, good. And Stella? Wear something nice. Maybe not that gray cardigan. Try to look successful." "Don't worry," I said, looking at Sterling. "I'll look exactly like a Harrington." I hung up. "They want me to fix the projector," I told Sterling. "Perfect," he said. That puts you exactly where you need to be. At the controls. The next 2 days were a blur of strategy. Sterling and I turned my tiny apartment into a war room. We mapped out the presentation. It had to be precise. We weren't just showing numbers, we were telling a story of betrayal. I watched videos of Tiffany's previous projects. They were all fluff, buzzwords, stock photos, and vague promises of synergy. My presentation would be the opposite. Cold, hard, brutal facts. On Thursday night, the night before the showdown, I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, looking at the city. The fear started to creep in. Not the fear of failure, but the fear of success. If I did this, there was no going back. I would be destroying my family. My father could go to jail. My mother would be a social pariah. Tiffany would be humiliated on a national scale. Was I really that person? Was I ruthless? I looked at the cactus on my windowsill, the one thing I took from the office. It was prickly, tough, and it survived with almost no water. You see the bones, Grandma had said. The bones of this family were rotten. If I didn't break them, the rot would spread to the thousands of employees who depended on the company for their livelihood. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the pension fund Arthur had raided. It was about the receptionists and janitors whose wages had been frozen while Tiffany bought handbags. I wasn't the villain. I was the surgeon. And surgery hurts. Friday morning arrived with a thunderstorm. I put on the navy suit. I pulled my hair back into a tight, sharp bun. I applied lipstick, a deep, dark red. No more invisible gloss. Sterling picked me up at 8 a.m. He handed me a briefcase. In here are physical copies of the will, the bank statements, and the affidavits from Martha. Do not let go of this handle. I won't. We drove to the Harrington Tower. The rain lashed against the windows. As we pulled up, I saw the press vans. My father had invited the media to witness Tiffany's ascension. He wanted the world to see his golden child take the throne. Ready? Sterling asked. No, I said honestly. But let's do it anyway. We walked into the lobby. The receptionist, Brenda, looked up. Her eyes widened. She had never seen me in a suit. She had never seen me walk with my head high. Miss Harrington. Good morning, Brenda, I said, breezing past the desk. I'm here for the board meeting. Wait. I have to call up. No need, Sterling said, flashing his ID. She's a shareholder. We got to the elevators. As the doors opened on the 40th floor, the noise hit us. The boardroom was buzzing. Waiters were serving coffee. The board members sat around the massive mahogany table, 12 old men in gray suits. At the head of the table sat Arthur. Beside him, Tiffany was practicing her smile in a compact mirror. Evelyn was fussing over Tiffany's hair. When I walked in, the room didn't go silent immediately. It took a moment. Then, Arthur saw me. His face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. What is she doing here? He barked, standing up. Security. I said no unauthorized personnel. Sit down, Arthur, Sterling's voice cut through the air like a whip. James? Arthur blinked, confused. You're retired. Get out. I am acting as legal counsel for a minority shareholder who wishes to exercise her right to speak under Bylaw 14, Section C, Sterling announced, placing his briefcase on the table with a heavy thud. Minority shareholder. Tiffany laughed, a shrill, nervous sound. Who? Stella. She doesn't own anything. She rents a closet in Queens. Actually, I said, stepping forward. My voice was steady. Louder than I expected. I own 5.2% of this company. Which is exactly 5.2% more than you own, Tiffany. The board members murmured. They looked from me to Arthur. This is ridiculous, Arthur sputtered. She's not well. She has mental issues. Dyslexia. She gets confused. I'm not confused, Father, I said, walking toward the projector at the front of the room. Mom asked me to come help with the projector. So, here I am. I plugged my laptop into the HDMI cable. You want me to leave? I asked the room. I will. But first, I think the board deserves to see the real Q for financial report. Not the one Arthur sent you. Cut the feed. Arthur screamed at the AV technician. Cut it now. But the technician hesitated. He looked at Arthur, sweating and screaming, and then he looked at me, calm and composed. Let her speak, a deep voice rumbled from the end of the table. It was Robert Vance, the chairman of the board. He was the one man my father feared. If she owns 5%, she speaks, Vance said, crossing his arms. Go ahead, young lady. But make it quick. I looked at Arthur. He was trembling. Tiffany looked like a deer in headlights. I placed my hand on the clicker. Thank you, Mr. Vance, I said. You might want to put down your coffee. This is going to be ugly. The silence in the boardroom was heavy, suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the projector cooling fan, and the rain beating against the floor-to-ceiling windows. I clicked the first slide. The screen didn't show a pie chart or a growth graph. It showed a scanned document. The Cayman transfer, August 2018. In 2018, I began, my voice clear, projecting to the back of the room without a microphone. We were told the company was facing a liquidity crisis. We laid off 15% of the workforce. We froze pensions. My father claimed it was due to market volatility. I used a laser pointer to circle a number on the screen. This is a transfer of $2.4 million from the company's operational reserve to a shell company called Blue Horizon Holdings. Mr. Vance, do you know who owns Blue Horizon? Arthur slammed his hand on the table. This is unauthorized data. She stole confidential files. Arrest her. I own the data, I corrected him calmly. Because I'm the one who covered the tracks. The board members gasped. That's right, I continued, looking directly at the board. For 5 years, I fixed the books. I hid these transfers because I was told they were temporary loans to save the family estate. I was loyal. I was the dumb daughter who just did what she was told. But I kept copies. I clicked to the next slide. The Harvard donation, Tiffany's degree, I said. Cost the shareholders $1.2 million in charitable donations to the University Building Fund. This money was taken from the R&D budget. Tiffany stood up, her face red. You liar. I studied. I worked hard. Tiffany, I said, looking her in the eye. You spelled business wrong on your application essay. I fixed that too. Stifled laughter rippled through the room. Tiffany slumped back into her chair, horrified. This is slander. Evelyn shrieked. How dare you attack your sister? I'm not attacking, I said. I'm auditing. I clicked again. And again. The slides flashed by like punches in a boxing match. The business trip to Monaco that was actually a family vacation. The contractor kickbacks. The tax evasion scheme disguised as consulting fees. Arthur Harrington has not been running a company, I concluded. He has been running a personal piggy bank. And the company is currently insolvent. If the SEC looks at these books today, Harrington Group ceases to exist tomorrow. The room erupted. Board members were shouting. Arthur was pale, clutching his chest. You ungrateful little witch. Arthur hissed, his voice venomous. I gave you a job. I gave you a roof. And this is how you repay me. By airing our dirty laundry. You didn't give me a job, Dad, I said. You gave me a hiding place. You thought if you kept me in the basement, no one would notice that the slow daughter was the only one who knew how to count. It doesn't matter. Arthur yelled, standing up and trying to regain control. She's a disgruntled ex-employee. These documents are out of context. And besides, I am the majority shareholder. I hold 55% of the voting stock. I can fire the whole board if I want to. I move to adjourn this meeting. He looked around triumphantly. I own this company. My vote is the only one that counts. Sterling stepped forward. He hadn't said a word during my presentation. He just watched, a small smile on his lips. Actually, Arthur, Sterling said. You don't. What are you talking about, James? Sterling opened his briefcase and pulled out the thick, cream-colored document. The will. I have here the last will and testament of Beatrice Harrington, dated September 2019. It supersedes the 2010 will you executed. Arthur froze. That's impossible. She wasn't lucid in 2019. We have video evidence of her competency, Sterling said. And we have her signature. He slid the document down the long table. It spun and stopped right in front of Robert Vance. Vance put on his glasses. He read the summary. His eyebrows shot up. It says here, Vance read aloud, his voice booming, that upon the event of Arthur's mismanagement, specifically defined as misappropriation of funds exceeding $1 million, the controlling interest of 51% reverts immediately to Stella Harrington. The silence returned. This time, it was absolute. Arthur looked at me. His eyes were wide with terror. He wasn't looking at his daughter anymore. He was looking at his boss. The air in the room felt electrified. Robert Vance looked up from the document, his gaze shifting from the paper to me. Is this authentic? Vance asked Sterling. Notarized, witnessed, and filed with the state, Sterling replied. The condition for activation was proof of embezzlement. Miss Harrington has just provided that proof. Vance nodded slowly. He closed the folder. Well then, Vance said, turning to Arthur. It seems we have a new chairman. No. Tiffany screamed. She actually screamed. She can't run a company. She can't even read a menu without squinting. She's stupid. Daddy, do something. Arthur lunged for the document. This is a forgery. Beatrice would never give it to her. She hated the girl. She didn't hate me, Dad, I said quietly. She pitied you. She knew you would ruin everything she built. She just wanted to make sure there was someone left to pick up the pieces. I walked over to the head of the table. Arthur was standing there, shaking. Please vacate the chair, Arthur, I said. You can't do this, he whispered. I'm your father. And you were my employer, I said. You fired me for redundancy. I'm just returning the favor. Arthur slumped. He looked old. Suddenly, the arrogance drained out of him, leaving a hollow shell. He stepped aside. I didn't sit down. I stood behind the chair. I am calling for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current CEO, Arthur Harrington, and the executive VP, Tiffany Harrington, I announced. All in favor? Robert Vance raised his hand instantly. Aye. Then the man next to him. Aye. Then the woman from the investment bank. Aye. One by one, 12 hands went up. Unanimous. Motion carried, I said. Arthur, Tiffany, you are relieved of your duties effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You can't kick us out. Evelyn cried, clinging to her purse. "We're family. Where will we go?" "We have the gala tonight." "There is no gala," I said. "I cancelled it this morning. And as for where you go, I suggest you go to the Hamptons house. While you still have it. The auditors will be looking into the company assets purchased with embezzled funds. I can't promise the house won't be seized." Tiffany looked at me with pure hatred. "I hate you. I have always hated you." "I know, Tiffany," I said, feeling a strange sense of peace. "But I never hated you. I just felt sorry for you. You've never accomplished a single thing on your own. And now, you're going to have to learn how." Security guards, the same ones who had blocked me earlier, moved in. "Mr. Harrington, Miss Harrington," the guard said. "Please come with us." I watched them go. Arthur looked back at me once at the door. There was no love in his eyes, only shock. He couldn't believe the slow child had outsmarted him. When the doors closed, I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 20 years. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the back of the leather chair to steady myself. Robert Vance stood up and extended his hand. "Congratulations, Ms. Harrington," he said. "Or should I say, Madam CEO?" "Interim CEO," I corrected him, shaking his hand firmly. "I have a lot of mess to clean up before I can take the title permanently. And I'm going to need help." "You have the board's full support," Vance said. "That presentation, the way you tracked those funds. I've never seen anyone trace Arthur's shell companies like that. How did you do it?" I smiled. I thought of the wooden box. I thought of the letters shifting on the page, dancing until they formed a picture. "I have a different kind of vision, Mr. Vance," I said. "Some people see words. I see the truth." I looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds were breaking over Manhattan. A single ray of sunlight hit the wet glass. I had done it. I had the company. I had the power. But the war wasn't over. Taking the crown is one thing. Keeping it and dealing with the wreckage of a family destroyed was another. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Watch your back. This isn't over." I knew who it was. Tiffany. I turned off my phone. Let her come. I wasn't the girl in the basement anymore. I sat down in the chair. It was big, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. "Now," I said to the board, opening my notebook. "Let's get to work. We have a company to save." The door clicked shut behind the security guards escorting my father and sister out of the building. For a solid 10 seconds, nobody moved. The boardroom smelled of stale coffee and expensive cologne, but the tension that had choked the air for the last hour was gone, replaced by a vacuum of stunned silence. I looked at the empty leather chair at the head of the table. My father's chair. It looked too big. It looked like a trap. "Miss Harrington?" Robert Vance asked gently. "Do you need a moment?" "No," I said, straightening my spine. "I've had 28 years of moments. I need a secure server key, and the master list of all current vendor contracts." I turned to James Sterling. "James, lock down the accounts. Freeze the corporate credit cards immediately. Tiffany is going to try to buy a consolation prize on her way out the door, and I don't want it to be a Cartier bracelet charged to the company." "Already done," Sterling said, closing his laptop with a satisfied snap. I flagged their cards the moment the vote passed. She's going to have a very embarrassing moment at the Starbucks downstairs. We spent the next 6 hours in that conference room. It wasn't glamorous. It was triage. We were stopping the bleeding. I had to explain to 12 panicked board members exactly how deep the rabbit hole of my father's embezzlement went. But the hardest part wasn't the math. It was the people. At 4 p.m., I called an all-hands meeting in the main atrium. News travels fast in a skyscraper. By the time I walked out onto the mezzanine balcony, 400 faces were looking up at me. I saw fear. They knew the CEO had been ousted. They knew the company was in financial trouble. They were thinking about their mortgages, their kids' tuitions, their healthcare. I gripped the railing. I wasn't used to public speaking. I was the girl who hid in the back office. I was the slow one who wasn't allowed to talk to clients. I took a deep breath. You see the bones, Stella. Hi, everyone, I said into the microphone. My voice echoed slightly. Most of you know me. I'm Stella. For the last 5 years, I've been the one asking you for receipts for the expense reports, or helping you unjam the photocopier on the 3rd floor. A few nervous chuckles rippled through the crowd. I spotted Sarah from HR, the woman who had handed me my termination box just days ago. She looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. You've heard rumors today, I continued. Most of them are true. Leadership has changed. But I want to make one thing clear. The corruption that happened in the C-suite does not reflect the work you have done on the ground. I know who built this company. I know who stays late. I know who fixes the problems. I pointed to a man in the 2nd row. Dave, from logistics. I know you saved the Manhattan Project last month by rerouting those steel shipments at 2 a.m. Dave's jaw dropped. And Brenda, at the front desk, I looked down at her. I know you've been fielding angry vendor calls for 6 months, because accounts payable was frozen by my father. That ends today. The atmosphere in the room shifted. It went from fear to something else, recognition. For the first time, the person at the top actually knew what the people at the bottom were doing. There will be no layoffs, I announced. We are going to trim the fat, but the fat isn't in this room. The fat was in the private jet budget. The fat was in the consulting fees paid to people who never stepped foot in this building. We are selling the jet. We are selling the executive fleet. And we are using that money to fund the pension plan that was raided. The silence held for a heartbeat, and then, applause broke out. It wasn't the polite, terrified applause of the banquet. It was real. It was relieved. I walked back into the executive suite, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. I walked into my father's office. It was massive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. Mahogany desk. And on the wall, a giant portrait of him and Tiffany. I wasn't in the picture. I sat down at the desk. I opened the top drawer. Inside, there was no office supplies. No stapler. Just a bottle of expensive scotch, and a stack of betting slips from a racehorse track in Kentucky. This was the work he was doing while I was balancing the ledgers. My phone buzzed. It wasn't a text this time. It was a notification from social media. Then another. Then 100. Twitter, Tiffany Harrington releases video statement sobbing about hostile takeover by mentally unstable sister. Instagram at Tiffany_official posted a video, my heart is broken. My sister, who we have supported through her disability her whole life, has betrayed us. She tricked my elderly grandmother. Justice will be served. I clicked the video. Tiffany was sitting in the back of a town car, tears streaming down her perfectly contoured face, though her mascara remained suspiciously perfect. She's sick, you guys, Tiffany whispered to the camera. Stella has always been confused. We tried to protect her. But she found some old papers and a corrupt lawyer, and she stole our home. She stole Daddy's legacy. Please pray for us. The comments were already rolling in. OMG, poor Tiffany. Who does that to their own family? Hashtag justice for Tiffany. I put the phone down on the mahogany desk. Sterling walked in, holding a tablet. You saw it. She's good, I admitted. She's playing the victim card perfectly. The media is eating it up, Sterling said. They love a golden girl fall from grace story, but they love a crazy sister story even more. Reporters are camped out in the lobby. They want a statement. I looked at the bottle of scotch. I thought about pouring a drink. Then I remembered who I was. I wasn't Arthur Harrington. No statement, I said, standing up. Stella, if you don't control the narrative, she will, Sterling warned. I don't need to control the narrative with words, James, I said, grabbing my laptop. I need to control it with evidence. Tiffany wants to play the social media game. Fine. Let's give the internet what it really wants. And what is that? The receipts. The weekend was a bloodbath, but not the kind played out with lawyers. It was played out on screens. Tiffany went on a media blitz. She appeared on a morning talk show on Saturday, looking frail and devastated. She told a heartbreaking story about how I used to have episodes as a child, how I would scream and break things, and how her parents had sacrificed everything to get me help. We loved her, Tiffany sobbed, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. We gave her a job even though she wasn't qualified. And now she throws us out on the street. It's cruel. The host nodded sympathetically. So you're saying this takeover is illegitimate? It's theft. Tiffany cried. And we are going to fight it. For the employees. For Daddy. I watched the interview from my apartment in Queens. I was eating instant noodles because I hadn't had time to grocery shop. Okay, Tiffany, I muttered to the screen. You want to talk about qualified? I opened the company's official Twitter account. I had recovered the password on Friday. It had 500,000 followers, mostly inactive. I didn't write a long emotional post. I didn't call her names. I uploaded a single audio file. Caption, regarding the qualifications of former management. It was the recording from 2018. The one where Arthur is on the phone with the Dean of Admissions. Voice of Arthur, look, I don't care that she failed the entrance exam twice. That's why I'm wiring the money. Just get her in. And make sure she passes economics, or I'm pulling the funding for the library. Voice of Dean, Mr. Harrington, this is highly irregular. Voice of Arthur, it's not irregular, it's business. Tiffany needs a degree to look good on the bio. She doesn't actually need to learn anything. She's just going to be a figurehead anyway. I hit send. Then I uploaded a second file. A PDF. Caption, regarding the sacrifices made for the company. It was a side-by-side comparison of two expense reports from December 2023. Left side, Stella office supplies, $45. Late night dinner, pizza for team, $32. Right side, Tiffany, client meeting, in Cabo San Lucas, $145,000. Private jet charter, $60,000. Wardrobe consulting, $22,000. I hit send. I put my phone down and took a shower. By the time I came out, the internet had exploded. The hashtag Justice for Tiffany had vanished. In its place was hashtag Receipts Queen and hashtag Harringtongate. The comments were brutal. Wait, the dad literally bought her degree. $145K for a vacation while they froze wages. Stella didn't just bring a knife to a gunfight, she brought a bazooka. But the family didn't stop. Desperation makes people dangerous. On Sunday night, I got a call from the head of IT. Miss Harrington, someone is trying to remotely wipe the servers, he said, his voice panicked. They're using a backdoor admin code. Is it Arthur? No. The IP address is coming from the Hamptons estate. They're trying to destroy the evidence of the embezzlement before the forensic auditors get there on Monday, I realized. Can you stop it? I'm trying, but they have the master encryption key. I didn't panic. I remembered the red notebook. Grandma's diary. She had written down everything Arthur ever did, including his passwords, because he was too lazy to remember them. Try the code 1985BH, I told the IT guy. That was the year Grandma incorporated the holding company. Arthur never changed anything she set up. A pause. The sound of typing. We're in, the IT guy shouted. Override successful. I'm locking them out now. We caught them mid-deletion. We have the logs. I hung up. They had just committed a federal crime. Attempting to destroy evidence during an active corporate audit. I called Sterling. James, I said. Call the authorities. Not just for the embezzlement. For cyber tampering. And send the marshals to the Hamptons. Are you sure, Stella? Sterling asked. Once the feds are involved, there's no protecting the family name. Your father will likely go to prison. I looked around my tiny apartment. I looked at the vision board I had made when I was 12, hidden in the back of my closet, a picture of me wearing a suit, standing in front of a building I designed. They tried to erase me, James, I said softly. Now they're trying to erase the truth. I'm not protecting them anymore. Understood, Sterling said. I'll make the call. I sat in the dark. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt a deep, aching sadness. I was about to send my father to jail. But then I remembered the way he looked at me at the banquet. The way he laughed when he called me slow. He didn't love me. He loved the control he had over me. And that control was gone. Monday morning. The sun was shining, but for the Harrington family, the sky had fallen. I wasn't at the office. I was in the back of a black SUV, following a U.S. Marshal's vehicle down the long, winding driveway of our Hamptons estate. This was the house where I spent my summers hiding in the library while Tiffany threw pool parties. This was the house where I wasn't allowed to eat in the formal dining room when guests were over because I might spill something. Now, legal notices were being taped to the front gate. Seized asset. We pulled up to the main entrance. The front door was open. I saw my mother, Evelyn, sitting on the front steps, surrounded by Louis Vuitton luggage. She wasn't crying anymore. She just looked stunned, staring at a patch of weeds in the driveway. Arthur was arguing with a federal agent near the garage. He was wearing a tracksuit, looking disheveled. Tiffany was nowhere to be seen. I stepped out of the car. Sterling was right beside me. Stella, my mother cried out when she saw me. She scrambled to her feet and ran toward me. For a second, I thought she might attack me. But she stopped a few feet away, her face crumbling into a desperate, pleading mask. Stella, thank God you're here. Tell them. Tell them this is a mistake. They're taking the cars. They're taking the house. They froze the bank accounts. We can't even buy food. It's not a mistake, Mother, I said calmly. It's a foreclosure. The company funds paid for this house. The company wants it back. But where will we go? She wailed, grabbing my arm. You can't do this to your own mother. We raised you. We fed you. I looked at her hand on my arm. The same hand that used to pinch me under the dinner table to make me shut up. You raised me to be a servant, Mother, I said, gently but firmly removing her hand. And you fed me leftovers. You have 3 other properties in your name, don't you? Oh wait, those were bought with embezzled funds too. They're all gone. Stella, please, she dropped her voice to a whisper. Your father, he's not well. The stress, it could kill him. Just write a check. 1 check. Just enough to get us a condo in the city. Just until we get back on our feet. You have millions now. You won't even miss it. This was the moment. The trap. The guilt trip. Just one check. I looked over at Arthur. He had stopped arguing with the agent and was looking at me. He didn't look sorry. He looked expectant. He expected me to fix it, like I fixed the accounting errors, like I fixed the leaky faucets. He expected the good daughter to save him. I reached into my purse. I pulled out my checkbook. My mother's eyes lit up. She let out a breath of relief. Thank you, darling. I knew you were the sensible one. I knew you loved us. I took a pen. I wrote on the check. I ripped it out. I handed it to her. She looked at it. Her face went pale. It wasn't a check for $1 million. It was a personal check for $5,000. What is this? She whispered. That's my severance pay, I said. The check you guys gave me when you fired me last week. I never cashed it. I'm returning it to you. That's exactly how much you thought 5 years of my life was worth. So that's what I'm giving you to start yours. 5,000, she screeched. That won't even cover a week at a hotel. Then I suggest you find a cheaper hotel, I said. Or get a job. I hear Starbucks is hiring. I worked 3 jobs in college to pay for the textbooks you refused to buy me. You'll figure it out. I turned to walk away. Stella. Tiffany appeared in the doorway. She looked a mess. No makeup, hair in a bun, wearing sweatpants. She looked normal. She walked down the steps. She didn't scream. She stood in front of me. You win, she said. Her voice was flat. You wanted to humiliate us. Congratulations. We're the laughingstock of New York. Are you happy? I didn't want to humiliate you, Tiffany, I said. I wanted you to stop stealing from me. I never stole from you, she spat. I was just being who they raised me to be. You think it was easy? Being the perfect one. Being the one who had to shine so they could feel important. I hate this life. I hate the expectations. Then you're free, I said. For the first time in your life, nobody expects anything from you. You have no reputation to uphold. No legacy to carry. You can just be Tiffany. If I were you, I'd see that as a gift. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. What's this? She asked. It's an application, I said. For the mailroom at Harrington Groups. Starting salary $18 an hour. Benefits included. She stared at me. You're joking. I'm not. You have 0 work experience. You have a fake degree. Nobody in this town will hire you. But I will. Because unlike Dad, I don't abandon family. But you start at the bottom. You learn the business. You carry the boxes. You make the coffee. If you survive 6 months, we'll talk about a promotion. Tiffany looked at the paper. She looked at her mother, who was sobbing over the luggage. She looked at her father, who was being handcuffed by the marshals for the cyber tampering charge. She took the paper. She didn't say thank you. But she didn't tear it up. I'll be there at 9 a.m., she mumbled. 8:30, I corrected. Don't be late. I walked back to the car. I didn't look back at the mansion. It was just a building. A building with rotten bones. As we drove away, Sterling looked at me. You gave her a job. She needs to learn the value of $1, I said. And besides, someone has to sort the mail. 6 months later the office was quiet. Not the eerie silence of fear, but the focused, productive hum of people working toward a goal. I stood in the elevator, watching the numbers climb. 40th floor. The doors opened. The office looked different now. The heavy mahogany walls were gone, replaced by glass and light. We had torn down the cubicles. It was an open floor plan. I walked past the reception desk. "Morning, Stella." Brenda called out. "Morning, Brenda. How's the new software working?" "Like a dream. Thanks for approving the upgrade." I walked to the back, near the mailroom. I peeked in. Tiffany was there. She was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. Her hair was in a ponytail. She was sorting a massive stack of packages. She looked tired. She had broken a nail. But she was working. She saw me. She didn't smile, but she nodded. A nod of respect. That was enough. I walked into my office. It wasn't the CEO's office anymore. I had turned that massive room into a collaborative workspace for the design team. My desk was in the corner, same size as everyone else's. On my desk sat the wooden box. The box that changed everything. We had turned the ship around. The stock price was up 15%. We had settled the fraud charges with the SEC. It cost us a massive fine, but we survived because we were transparent. Arthur was serving a 3-year sentence in a minimum security facility for embezzlement. Evelyn was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment in New Jersey, learning how to cook for the first time in her life. I sat down and opened my laptop. I had a meeting with the board in 10 minutes. But first, I had one more thing to do. I opened a new document. It was the charter for the Beatrice Initiative. It was a scholarship and mentorship program for neurodivergent students, kids with dyslexia, ADHD, autism, who wanted to enter the fields of architecture and finance. I typed the mission statement to prove that seeing the world differently is not a disability. It is a design advantage. I looked at the framed photo on my desk. It was me and Grandma Beatrice, taken when I was 10. We were covered in mud, building a castle in the garden. She was laughing. I was looking intensely at the structure, making sure the walls wouldn't fall. "You see the bones, Dooley?" I touched the glass. "I built it, Grandma," I whispered. "I built a house that won't fall down." I stood up, grabbed my notebook, the same kind I used to hide in meetings, and walked out to lead the company. I wasn't the slow one. I wasn't the quiet one. I was Stella Harrington, the narrative architect of my own life. And for the first time, I liked the story I was writing. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long journey from that girl crying in the banquet hall to the woman standing here today. If you take one thing away from this, let it be this: your value is not defined by the people who can't see your worth. It's defined by what you build when they aren't looking. I want to know, what is the wooden box in your life? What is the hidden talent or strength you have that people overlook? Comment with the letter A if you are ready to open your own box and show the world who you really are. And if you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. I'm Stella, and I'll see you in the next one.